We're back. All right, part two of our season recap end season episode. We've got our league award ceremony, League Awards TBD. Announced tonight. We will give out best manager, best draft, worst draft, biggest trade rape, best trade, and scariest up and comer. I'm excited. I think this could be the start of a nice yearly tradition. Maybe take some shape. League Awards TBD.
Hell yeah.
All right. I guess we can just jump right into it.
Let's do it.
The Adam Pavicic Award for excellence in team management goes to Nico.
Yay, Nico.
We talked about it a good bit. Nico had a really solid draft. He had a lot of picks and he hit on most of them. Very active in the trade market and most of the hits there too. So he felt like a pretty rock solid choice for best manager. Had a good year.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, Dan and I picked these together. There was definitely some debate on a lot of them, but this one was not one of them. I originally was opposed to giving last place best manager. Um, so I really tried my hardest to find someone who I thought did a better job with what they started with, and I could not do it. So we both named Nico there. I agree with Dan. I think he killed the draft, both quantity and quality of trades. I am in the camp, which I think is a less popular opinion, that moving off Achan was a really, really smart move. Um, so I think he really nailed that, getting Puka Nakua back. Um, and not to mention the absolute mountain of picks he still owns. So I think he did a fantastic job this year. And just a quick shout out. We also considered Jesse for this one. Obviously, the champ has to be thought about in the best manager conversation. But if you watched episode one, you know that I didn't love his Kelsey trade, and I thought he could have been a better team. And I don't know, great season, obviously, but I think Nico really amazed with everything he did.
To be honest, I think I look a little bit more brightly on the moves Jesse made this year. I think he really did have a genuine case for best manager. Um, as I'm sure all of you remember, there was a CMC sweepstakes in action at one point. Jesse was on the fence of calling it a day, moving off his veterans and moving on to next year. But he looked at his team and he decided to put his chips in and go for the win. And that's a move as a manager that he's now got a ring forever because of it. So I think that is a move worthy of best GM. But Nico, just so many moves, so many of them positive. Yeah, I think we can talk to our blue about it. He's really positioned himself very well moving forwards.
Definitely. I was also going to give Dan the opportunity, but I guess
I forgot I was gonna. Another honorable mention, definitely in the debate, a team we talked about in the first one, Swish to Fish. The Swamp Rats are on the come up for sure. When you look at Ryan's trades, he's made a lot of moves to really position himself well to get off of some older guys. And now when you look at the team versus where it was a year or two ago, he has some good young pieces and some guys who can keep contributing right now. Swish, do you have any specific moves of yours that you would like to highlight?
Yeah,
For
I think we're still some receivers away, and we'll be in the hunt for that. But in terms of adding Jameer Gibbs and Rashad White before the season started this year, it's hard to really get in on the ground floor of two better guys. I'm really happy about Charbonnet and Tyjae Spears as well, who I also added in this draft. Jerome Ford ended up looking like a solid piece. David Montgomery really exploded in Detroit. Um, so, not to mention that, honestly, the best manager award should be primarily decided by number of quarterbacks. So, I think that puts me in the conversation alone.
you keep a hell of a quarterback room.
We're like
All
Brady.
right. Well, our next award, worst manager. goes to Luke. Yeah. Whoa,
Oh, oh.
yeah. Sorry to do it to you. It's almost by default, really. Across the board in our league, we have 10 pretty well-run teams. There was nobody who really had a dud of a season as a manager. Luke's season just went awry worse than anyone else's.
Yeah, he definitely had some bad luck. I think he tried to get too much for Cup as well. I think had he been able to flip Cup, before flip Cup, before he really started to look kind of inconsistent, we could be talking about this season in a much different light. But he held on to the hope too long. He regressed in terms of record, didn't add anything major in terms of draft capital or really promising young dudes. The Watson and Dobbins that he acquired in the trade with me, though he didn't really give up a shitload. Like I think those are some flops, to be honest, and that's why I was moving them. Still time for Watson, but Packers are a crowded room there. So yeah, I just it's gonna be a tough climb back for Luke. And I think honestly, I was trying to think of anyone else that I would give this to, and everyone had their bright spots. So it's gotta be Luke.
Don't want to call out your honorable mention.
Oh, I did have an honorable mention. You're right. As I mentioned in episode 1, if you haven't watched, I'll repeat myself. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and expecting different results. This best describes Brennan Rouse, who, though he was coming off a single-digit loss in the championship, did nothing to this time around attempt to ensure victory and just let the whole squad run it back, which, while it makes for a good story, maybe a movie one day if someone buys the rights, I doubt they will, because he did the exact same thing and lost by single digits in the championship. He finished better than I did on the season, but he also started much, much higher. So I couldn't give it to him, and it's hard to knock him too much for it. But again, a lot of people had bright spots in their season. Brendan had no spots. So that in its own right, I think deserves a little bit of a tisk tisk.
Yeah, definitely a category where it was hard to find contenders for the award. It really does feel like Luke wins almost by default because it's not like he made managerial moves that too many that really hurt his team. It just things didn't go his way this year.
He's also the first team to finish below an expansion team. So
That is a bit of a black eye. That alone might give you the worst manager uh title. Our next pick goes to best draft. So this is best overall body of work in the draft this year. Our winner is me, Dan, the
Dan,
fucking
yay,
dog.
Dan. Wow.
Whoa, whoa, yeah.
I'll take the reins on
The
this
crowd
one.
goes wild.
So Dan wanted to give this to Nico, but I thought where Dan really made up the ground was his quality in lesser picks. Let's see, Nico had 3 picks before Dan even picked, and while they were all smashes, Bijan, JSN, and Achan, just getting Jaden Reed and Puka in the third and the fourth, with Michael Wilson in the fourth as well, I loved. As far as a team that was contending could go, he really was in no market to get any draft picks where he should have made his team immediately better, and yet somehow he did. And I think had injuries not gotten the best of him, we could have been looking at those rookies with rings right now. So while the season didn't go his way, I think the draft couldn't have gone better. And I wanted to recognize him for it.
Definitely did more with less in my draft. Puka in the fourth round is just it was free money. It was the pick of the draft. It's what made my off season. It's frankly what kept my team so dominant and still high level despite a year with a lot of injuries. And it was kind of I viewed it as free money when I was turning him into ETN. I was like, my running back room is barren, so I'll just take a young guy there instead. But Yep, him and Reed were both real good values when you look at the guys going around them, when you think about where I picked. But Nico and Tom are two teams that I want to call out because more valuable is hitting on your very top picks. You have to hit on your firsts, and it's really helpful to hit on your seconds. And so Tom coming away with Jordan Addison and Sam Laporta, another one of the steals of the draft. And Nico, it's kind of expected when you have as many picks as Nico had, but that doesn't make it less important to hit on
Boy,
all those.
can I tell you, it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, it's Nico had more of a or less of a Ryan season, I guess, and more of a what we'll call a Nico season. But yeah,
Nico
um,
season.
those picks are never guaranteed. And to that, we will go to our worst draft.
Which I'm going to, in the moment, name the Trey Sermon Worst Draft Award.
I love it. Feels right. Um, our winner is gonna be Luke again. Luke, I'm
Oh,
sorry, we're not
man.
trying to rag on
Ah,
you, bud.
come
Uh,
on.
as far as I can see, I have one pick written down, and it's Michael Mayer at 109. Um, and that is a swing and a miss. Not saying Mayer won't be anything, but I mean, a first round pick, a mediocre tight end is a bad look. And when that's all you had, everyone else who didn't make a lot of picks had hits. Zach's first pick, I think, was Tank Dell in the third. I hit on Puka and Jaden Reed. Like the other people that weren't making a lot of picks had their hits or semi hits, and I see 0 for 1 from Luke on that draft.
With Laporta going half a round after him, although you can't necessarily fault Luke for not seeing that before it even happened. It does look bad. But you look at what happened with Luke's team this year. There's pretty much nowhere where he couldn't have used talent. And they say tight ends take time. That seems to be less and less true by the draft class. But even if we're assuming tight ends take time, if if Michael Mayer becomes a top 6, 5, 4 tight end, there's still probably better places this pick could have been used in terms of building this roster up from the dirt. And yeah, I was in full agreement with Dan. This was another one where I didn't really have an honorable mention, and it kind of by default went to the guy with the least amount of impact picks and the worst use of them. Rob only had one pick, and it was 7 picks after this, but he turned that into Rashee Rice, who I like a lot. So yeah.
All right. Well, we talked about the draft. Now we're gonna move on to trades. And so first we have the Chris Thompson honorary Me Too Award for biggest trade rate. And that award is going to go to Jesse's playoff push, buying Kelsey, Thielen, Brown, and Shorter from Zach for a first, second, and Dontavian Wicks to rub a little bit of salt in the wound. We've talked about it a little bit already, but it was smart of Jesse to put his chips in for a ring, but I think he'd like that one back.
Yeah, at the time I mentioned, I don't know to who, maybe it was on a podcast, that I if I was him, I would have maybe given the slightly higher price tag to Pat for Hawkinson, which as it turns out would not have been very helpful for the playoffs. But I still stand by the fact that with the first and the second and a young receiver who has shown some flashes, you probably could have gotten better. Kelsey and Thielen, although they really were dog shit in the playoffs, were already looking pretty bad. So, or not bad, but not league winners, and league winners they were not. Hollywood really fizzled out. So, yeah, I think Zach overwhelmingly won this one. I'm gonna shout out who I wanted to win, a little bit biased. I thought that I really got Nico good, acquiring Rashad White and the pick that became Zach Charbonnet for Treylon Burks and the pick that became Tank Bigsby. But in the grand scheme of things, um, yeah, Kelsey and Thielen and Hollywood all immediately becoming unstartable almost when you're giving away the little draft capital you do have. It's tough. It's tough. And I think Zach really Jesse took Jesse to school there.
Yes. It's one of those times where hindsight's just 2020 looking back at it. And the same could be said for that Rashad trade. Definitely a very solid candidate. You got a top 5 season long running back for a bust wide receiver. And I mean, 5, 6 pick swap in the draft. That's free money. All
Like,
right. And that will take us to our best trade. So here we're looking at not lopsided for one team, but the trade that we thought best showed the spirit of fantasy football, helping both teams, really made a lot of sense across the board. Just the best fantasy football trade. And so for that, we are giving it to what is still, as far as we know, no one's disproved it yet, the first three-way trade in league history. And that is the pre-playoff swap of Puka, Travis Etienne, and Devon Achane between Pat, Nico, and I.
yeah, that was a fun one. And in episode 1, I only read through it like 4 times, so I'm not going to do that again. But I really liked Nico adding Puka. I thought that was a great move, and I said that already that I like him moving off Achan. I understand what Dan was doing, although it did not work out. I think that might come back and bite him, but adding who was, I think at the time, a top 5 running back on the season.
Top 3 running back.
Top 3. I thought he might be 3. He was 3, right?
I don't know what he finished as. At the time, he was RB2.
I thought he was 3 at the time. I don't know what he finished as either, but it definitely didn't go up. So yeah, it was a fun trade. It was a blockbuster. It was right at the buzzer. And honestly, I've talked about how I like Nico moving off Achan. Pat, I kind of like his addition of Achan. I don't love Achan as a player, but I think Pat needed some more juice on that roster. I think he was plenty deep. He had decent talent across the board, but I really like the firepower that we've seen out of Achan. When your RB2 is currently Jalen Warren, I believe, you kind of need your RB1 to bring some points. And yeah, I think it makes sense for everybody. So I really liked that one. I want to shout out as well Rob and Pat, the Ayuk trade. I think, like I already said in episode 1, made a lot of sense for Rob. He addressed some needs without necessarily selling his playoff chances. And Josh Downs looks pretty good, although he did then flip him for Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, I liked it for both teams, and I thought it was good.
A lot of good trades this year. It's really hard to find ones that really stand out as not being like good quality trades for both sides, where you can really see the logic and see pros and cons afterwards. And our last award will go to our scariest up and coming team. I think we've talked about it ad nauseum this point. Nico. I'm certainly scared of him.
That's the triple crown for Nico in the award show right there. Yeah, I think everyone should be scared. Youth, proven talent, potential, well-rounded roster. It's all there, and honestly, there's way more guys that I'm like they will have a better season next year than they have ever, than guys that I think are at or coming down from their ceiling. So, yeah, Nico scaring me a little bit.
Yep. And then we will give a honorable mention to Pat, who it's hard when you're being compared to the Titan that Nico has built. But the job Pat has done of rebuilding that team is really, yeah, worthy of applause as well. Another scary up and coming team, another team that's positioned to be making the playoffs and title pushes like consistently for the next couple years. So big round of applause to them.
First, I mean, we mentioned it for Luke, but first expansion team to not finish bottom 2. So hard not to say Pat's not on his way.
Yes, definitely. I think a team with some bright skies in the future.
All
All
right,
right,
Dan.
well,
What do we have coming up?
that does it for our award show. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about what the league's got coming up the next couple weeks. Starting tomorrow, I'm gonna begin kicking the tires on our playoff competition. And so basically, what I'm gonna do is I will randomize the draft order. And it'll be a snake draft, and we are gonna draft a team of a QB, a running back, a receiver, a tight end, and a flex. So 5 picks for each team out of the teams competing in the playoffs this week. And the top, I haven't decided whether it'll be 6 or 8, but the top highest scoring teams will all advance to the next round where they will then draft again from the remaining player pool. And it'll go till we have one team standing and they will get the extra $100 from our buy-in. So look out for that tomorrow. I will text everyone some more details about it then. Um, but that's coming up. Also coming up, we
Hmm.
talked about a little bit before the super flex draft, our redraft of the QBs. Very exciting times. We're going to, after the Super Bowl, accumulate, we'll pick up everyone's picks for what the draft order should be. And then next time you see this pod, Ryan and I will be announcing it not so live on the air. We will be revealing the QB draft order. In addition to that, we're going to be reaching out to all of you for some interviews. We're going to try to get a quick blurb with just us talking to each manager about their team, and we'll put together an off-season full review of just everybody talking about their season, talking about what's moving forward, the draft, the QB draft, maybe a little bit of everything. So look out for those. Look out for us in your inbox, and thank you all for another great year.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks for watching, everybody.